Welcome to Sleepless in St. Canard, where nostalgia places REM cycles. I'm Kitty.
And I'm Ange.
And we haven't slept
in 30 years.
This is a podcast about the 90s Disney cartoon Darkwing Duck, where we lay on the morals real thick, where beautiful memorials are constructed, and where murderous supervillains get book deals. That's right, dear friends. And grieving widows and such. Today, we are talking about Dead Duck.
What a title.
It's on the nose. On the bill, even. So yeah. You have any overall thoughts, concerns, news updates before we dive on in here into the afterlife?
Only thing I'll say is I was curious to see who wrote this episode because, I don't know, I just was. And it was a writer who I think only wrote on this single episode and no other episodes in the series, which I thought was interesting. And it was someone named Carter Crocker.
Carter. If you're out there, we have questions.
I mean, it was pretty well written and had lots of funny parts and puns and stuff. Oh, yeah, I think that's why I looked it up, because I was like, there's a lot of puns in this one. And I was just curious to see who was behind it all. And that was the name I got.
Who you could shake your fist at.
What a name. Carter Crocker.
Carter Crocker, you mad genius, you. It is very much a strange episode. I see we haven't done one of these in so long. Don't we usually have you do like a 5-second recap?
Sure.
Of the episode?
So I literally just watched the episode like an hour ago to like refresh my memory. But basically, Darkwing Duck dies and goes to hell. And he's just like, that's not going to stop me. And he leaves. Which I think is the most badass thing that Darkwing has ever done on the TV show. Ever. And then he gets chased down by death throughout the episode. And there's all kinds of funny stuff. And I always forget Morgana was in this episode because she's in it, but she's not a huge part of the plot. And it's not really centered around her. So I don't know. Usually I'm very good at remembering who's in what episodes, but I always get surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, Morgana. So she's there too.
Pretty good in this one too. She's not like the shrieking, love interest. She still has her quirky magic that doesn't work, but she's the pretty level-headed Morgana in this one, which I enjoyed.
Exactly. And yeah, it has some emotional parts. Tony J is death, which I think is
R.I.P. Tony J.
I loved him. He played, for those who are not aware, if you ever watched Reboot, he played Megavolt, and he was Shere Khan in Tailspin as well.
And he was Judge Claude Frollo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
He does some really iconic stuff, so he was perfect.
He got to sing one of the creepiest Disney songs ever put into a musical movie.
It's true.
And, yeah, Tony J, a legend. And great. He's so good at everything, but he's so good as death in this, too. So one thing that I did not remember about this episode, because I honestly don't know the last time I watched it, which I feel like I say every time we do an episode where we watch something. But again, just like last week, I forgot this was a Megavolt episode. I always forget that he's there, so every time he's on screen, I'm just like that meme of Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where he's pointing at the TV. I'm like, oh! Megavolt! And he just kind of jumps in from the beginning, too. So if you guys at home want to watch along on Disney+, this is Season 1, Episode 47, Dead Duck. Darkwing Duck becomes a ghost-like being. They're not wrong.
Ghost-like, but not a ghost.
I mean, he literally becomes a ghost because he is dead. It's just funny that they kind of tried to gloss over in the description that he dies when that is basically 90% of the episode. Is him being dead and talking about how he's dead when he finally accepts the fact that he's dead, but we'll get there. But this episode opens with Launchpad and Darkwing chasing Megavolt, doing one of my favorite things that Megavolt does in the show when he's skating on the power lines.
Does he do
It is
that
so,
in any other episodes?
I feel like he does, but I don't, honestly, I don't remember. But it's spectacular and I love it, and it's a perfect way. Like last episode we watched was inside Binky's brain where he had a pickup truck. I would much rather him be skating along the power lines with his token, bag of money with a big money sign on it. It's so good. It's just so funny, and it seems like a very efficient way to travel because he keeps up. They have to really gun it to catch up to him. And also, there was at one point, and it's one of my big regrets in life, which is not really that big of a regret, but I like to be dramatic. There's a webcomic artist / writer, Ryan North, who did the dinosaur comics, and he writes now for The Incredible Squirrel Girl and the Adventure Time comic books. He did a bunch of those, but he million years ago had an online shop where he had laundry bags that were those big burlap sack looking things that just had the big dollar sign on it. And I was like, oh, I should buy that. And it's gone and it's never come back. Just think that would be so funny, just rolling up to the laundromat with a big, like, Beagle Boy money sack full of dirty clothes.
You should contact him and ask him if he still sells them.
Dear Mr. North, you still got them sacks of fake money? Hit me up. I assume he listens. Everyone in the world listens to our podcast. Orion, hit me up with one of the money sacks. But yeah, so Megavolt is skating along the power lines, and of course they wind up, because I feel like this whole episode too is very Looney Tunes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very slapstick. So they chase Megavolt and wind up in an Anvil Factory. So of course anvils are raining down all over the place, and they do catch up to Megavolt, and he's thwarted by a completely ridiculous thing that then comes back later, where Darkwing puts his hands together and wiggles his middle fingers on either side of his. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like you put the backs of your hands together. Basically, I would be as confused as Megavolt and later Death would be if someone prompted me to do that.
Darkwing also only has 4 fingers, so I don't know if that gives him an advantage over us humans.
Oh, that could be. That very well could be. But he says, I bet you can't do this, because Megavolt was talking about how he could do anything. And Megavolt, spectacular, brilliant, beautiful Megavolt, says any idiot can do that, and tangles up his fingers when he tries to do that. And as he's trying to untangle them, he grunts to himself,
any idiot can do that. Ow! Ooh! Oh, okay, so it just proves I'm not any idiot.
It's all over, Megavolt. Your goose is cooked.
It just make me laugh. We should all reframe our failures like Megavolt. Everyone take a leaf out of his book, take a spark out of his bulb.
He is not afraid to admit when he has one brain cell.
Yes, because he's got one more than 90% of the people in St. Canard. So, that's it. Bigger dummies than him. And then this is, I think, we've already talked about the anvils and Megavolt tangling up his fingers, but this is where I got really clued into the fact that this was going to be a very silly episode, which I think is interesting because it deals with such dark subject matter, but it's so goofy that it never really feels all that dark, because Darkwing says your goose is cooked or something to that effect, and Megavolt, they're on the catwalks in the Anvil Factory, and he runs over and there's an oven there and he opens the oven and there's a goose cooking in it, and he tests it. He's like, oh no, it's not ready yet. I'm like, oh, we're gonna have one of those episodes.
Maybe they did that on purpose to soften the blow of Darkwing Duck dying.
Yeah, I really feel like it is, because it's so silly, and silly things keep happening, so it just kind of negates all the seriousness because it's just being silly, and I appreciate that. I think it's pretty effective. This is also one of those weird episodes where in parts it feels overly animated.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yes.
like where Darkwing will be talking and his arms are flailing and his head is moving way too much. It's just like, it looks like they had planned more for him to say and didn't want to get rid of the footage, so they just sped it up. There's a few times like that throughout the episode. But yeah, so there's a random oven on the catwalks in the Anvil Factory that has Megavolt's cooking goose in it.
You know the Final Destination movies?
Yes.
So in the movies, I remember that whenever someone was about to die, there was like signs of death ahead of time, and like the characters always had to look out for them. And I feel like in some weird way, that's kind of what they did with the Anvil Factory, because it's like, uh-oh, is this where he's gonna die? And then he doesn't.
So this is the first actual installation in the Final Destination series is episode of Dead Duck, Darkwing Duck,
Yes.
1991. The way the franchise started, little did everyone else know, and just connected the dots. Watch out, Hollywood. So as Ange just mentioned, this is all happening in an anvil factory, and anvils are falling, and one falls on Darkwing's head, and it just completely smashes his helmet. And he takes it off. And as he hops back into the rat catcher to go chase after Megavolt, who is now running away again, Launchpad chimes in with our message of this episode, the lesson for the kiddies, that it's way too dangerous to drive without a helmet. This is from the pilot that crashes into everything.
And isn't wearing a helmet of his own.
True. He is wearing a little aviator cap, though. So... But also, I feel like Launchpad's head is so thick that he basically was born with a helmet on.
He'd break the wall. The wall is the one that would not survive.
This would be a completely different episode if that wall that Darkwing hits is the one that is having this traumatic life after death experience. Launchpad kind of harps on for a little while, and Darkwing gets super annoyed with him and just screams at him. And man, it sure would be a shame if he just died.
Darkwing, wait! We can't go anywhere, DW. You're not wearing a helmet.
An anvil fell on it, and I don't have time to get a new one.
Yeah, driving without a helmet. That seems kind of too dangerous, if you ask me.
Don't worry, Launchpad. I'll be careful.
I mean, a lot of people look up to you. What if somebody saw you not wearing a helmet and...
Launchpad, give it a rest!
Right after doing this, which is what he does. Completely 1000% too, it's his fault because he's just not looking at where he's driving and just smashes into a bench on the sidewalk and goes flying into this brick wall and just lands straight in the afterlife and is immediately 5 seconds later, like, the dust clears and he's in hell.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Yes, it's just like, well, I guess this is where he really belongs. So, Darkwing Duck is in hell. I don't even think we're 5 minutes into the episode, and we're setting the pace. There's a long line of people hanging out, and he just completely cuts the line, and the devil shows up. And this episode, they call him Lucifer.
He's usually referred to as Beelzebub.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it interesting that he could call him Lucifer, but when he asked who he was, he had to
it.
Yeah, he had to whisper it into his ear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this dude has got the weirdest design. Like, I paused on him because I'm familiar with this character. He's one of the ones that stuck with me, but he's just so friggin' weird looking. Like, he's got like this big snout with this big nose and nostrils, but he's got like this stereotypical like old-timey devil with it was, you know, like the curly handlebar mustache and the goatee, but he's wearing like a button-up orange shirt with a cloak on top. It's just, he's a strange looking dude.
His head especially, it's like he's got horns, but it's like miniature, like,
they're like nubbins.
Yeah, there's like nubbins on top of nubbins. It's a bit strange.
he's just a lumpy chicken nugget, basically. And yeah, so Darkwing is just like, oh, where am I? And who are you? And so Lucifer slash Beelzebub whispers to him, and we don't know what he says, but when he's like, oh, and where am I? It totally sounds like he says, bourgeois.
That's what it
So-
sounded like to me too, and I was very confused.
Your acquaintance or what?
Yeah, thank you, but who are you and where am I?
Me? Why,
You are?
and this is bourgeois.
It is?
You got it.
It's because hell is bougie now, I guess. That's the bourgeois. So Darkwing is appropriately concerned to learn this. And this begins Beelzebub's harassment of the people in line who, as far as we know, are just patiently standing there, but he just starts screaming at people and zapping them with his pitchfork. And we get the Howie screen again.
Yes.
As somebody gets thrown into the fiery pit of hell.
I think they were attorneys and plumbers, if I recall correctly.
The first one was a car salesman,
Oh, of course.
but then the senator and a plumber are next. And that's how it goes when you're in bourgeois with Beelzebub.
The people in the line are reused characters from previous episodes that I recognized. I recognized one of them as being, I think it was Glue Girl, or at least she was like the person that had like glue powers in the episode with Cement Head. I think that's Mutancy on the Bouncy, but there's like a whole bunch of them lined up, and I'm like, I actually recognize these characters as background, so they probably just borrowed. Yeah, they borrowed them from other episodes because it's easier than just designing a whole lineup of people. But I thought that was kind of funny. They all went to hell. Oh, sorry, I meant bourgeois.
Bourgeois. Y'all can go right to bourgeois. Yeah, so Darkwing, as you know, Beelzebub is zapping people, he just runs out of hell.
Hey, wait. Where do you think you're going?
I got better things to do with my life than hang around here.
Hey, you can't just walk out of here. Hey, we got rules, we got regulations, you know? And we also... Hold on a second. Hey, plumber, will you get back in line? What's the matter with you, huh?
Sorry, Lucifer, but I wouldn't be caught dead down here.
Open up, or I'll sue! And I got the best attorneys around you!
He's like, I'm out of here, and there's an elevator.
He literally is just like, this is stupid, I'm leaving, and just storms out. And I'm just like, what? When we talk about BDE energy, this is it. This is Darkwing's Big Duck energy, okay?
Yes, it is. Pinnacle. BDE. So the elevator pops up through the clouds, is now in heaven, and Saint Peter searches the heavenly guest list in his old as hell computer and doesn't find Darkwing Duck. So he's like, oh, maybe it's under Drake Mallard. And Darkwing is saying something and is immediately like, wait, what? But then Lucifer appears from the elevator, and he and St. Peter immediately start bickering over who gets Darkwing. Which, to be fair, when he died, he went straight to bourgeois. So I think that was pretty clear where he belonged. But St. Peter's cute. He's like a little dog-nosed dude. And he kind of sounds like he's related to Foghorn Leghorn a little bit.
I was thinking of Kentucky Fried Chicken Man for some reason.
Oh, the Colonel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same. Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Foghorn Leghorn, who is an oversized rooster man.
It's all connected.
See, we're connecting all the dots. So they just kind of squabble over who gets this. And then they decide to flip a coin to see who gets them, because that's how all, immortal... Ethereal? I don't know what word I'm looking for. That's how the fate of every eternal soul should be decided. And at some point during the last 10 minutes of the show, 5 minutes of the show, Darkwing has completely denied the fact, hasn't even thought that he's dead. And it's not until this moment that he catches on.
He's evil. He's good. He's evil. He's I'm telling you, he's evil. Good. Hold it. I'll tell you what. He's good. We'll flip for him, eh? Tails, I get the dead guy. Heady's yours.
Just a minute here. Who's dead?
You, sir.
No, 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 not me. Dead, I never felt better. If you two think I'm dead, you're dead wrong.
And he retreats back to the elevator and goes down to Earth, which I guess it's the afterlife's only elevator because nobody chases him, and I guess he doesn't hit the return button. I don't know. Back on Earth, his ghost crawls out of the giant Darkwing Duck-sized hole where he died in the brick wall behind that ill-fated bench, and he tries to talk to the passerby, a very fancy-looking man, as he waddled on by. So he gets home, and he gets there and is basically there for 2 seconds before Launchpad and Goslin come home in their mourning clothes, sobbing hysterically, and they lament the loss of Darkwing as Ghost Darkwing refuses to accept that this is happening and just screams at them. It's just yelling and jumping on things and screaming. And lo and behold, through the sheer force of rage and volume, he suddenly becomes visible to them. Note to all you ghosts out there, just scream at your loved ones long enough and they'll see you. And Goslin is very excited, understandably, to see her dead father and tries to hug him. But she runs right through him and splats against the wall. And everybody realizes that Darkwing is dead. And Launchpad, I think that's like basically the last of sad Launchpad. From here, he's just kind of got the zingers.
Something's happened to me. I don't know what, but I need your help.
You don't need help, DW. You need an undertaker.
Let's get one thing straight. I am not dead.
Darkwing just declares once again that he is not dead and that they have to go to the expert in spooky stuff, and they head over to Morgana. And just, I think across the board, the animation in this episode is very good, but Morgana looks weird.
She's off model for sure.
Yeah. Like, she doesn't look bad. She just looks awkward. And she's very pink. She's not red. She's like a pink.
I feel like she's a bit smaller than she's supposed to be, too. Like, maybe she should be, like, slightly taller, but...
And she says, "Oh, darling, you look as if you have one foot in the grave." And Launchpad says, "Both, actually." This Launchpad coming in with the zingers over his best friend's dead ghost self. So Morgana quickly gets her spell book, which, well, she doesn't actually. It comes walking over to her on a pedestal, which I gotta get me one of them. And she finds a spell, and like her spells in this are fun. I didn't write any of them down, but like the word play is really cute. And so he gets reincarnated as a carnation, which doesn't quite work out.
He looks to be alive, though. He's not transparent.
He does. Yes, he's not see-through anymore as the carnation, but it's not good enough for him. So he turns back into a ghost, and he starts to storm out of the house because he's all pissed off. But then Opal, he's walking past a room where Morgana, I guess, is just was watching Opal windbag. It's, in her spare time. Morgana just watches be like the rest of us. And she's doing a special on supervillains who kill crime fighters and the agents who represent them. And as she says this, Megavolt just like pops up over her head and waves like super happy. It's pretty adorable. Yeah, so she just flat out says that, Megavolt killed Darkwing. And it's just, I think that's, for me, like, I don't know that a show this, like, for kids in this day and age would be as blunt about it. So that's interesting. It's like, oh yeah, he's dead. And to be fair, I think it's also pretty funny that Megavolt is taking credit for killing Darkwing when Darkwing killed Darkwing.
Oh, Megavolt.
But Darkwing decides to go after Megavolt. And when we see Megavolt, I think he's in his lighthouse lair, because the interior of this, like, his hideout in this one looks familiar to me, and I think that's which one it is, which I think we see in...
I'm pretty sure it's the lighthouse. It looks like it to me.
But he's on the phone talking to his agent, I guess, about movie deal that's going on and who's going to play him. And Ghost Darkwing comes in with his I am the terror. He says, I am the ghost of a chance that you don't have. And then immediately just starts trying to attack Megavolt, who cannot see or hear him. So it's basically just Darkwing, like, kicking the air. And it's pretty funny. And Megavolt is just completely oblivious on the telephone talking about how he wants a big actor to play him in this movie. He's unhappy with the casting choices, and he threatens to take the whole project over to the you-know-who brothers. So Darkwing is unable to defeat Megavolt because he's dead, and Megavolt doesn't even know that he's there. And then Death arrives, and he's pretty intimidating. Like, he's really tall. I think he might be the tallest character that we see. Like, he's taller than Morgana.
Mm-hmm.
He's very tall, and he's just like the typical, hooded figure, but he's beefy. Like, he's all bones under there, so his rib cage must be like a barrel. And he's just got kind of human-looking skeletal hands, and that's all we see of what lies beneath the cloak. And he does his best Christmas Carol impression and just points solemnly towards the door. And Darkwing pretends like he's gonna go with Death, and he's like, oh, after you, and then slams the door behind Death like that's gonna stop him. But it doesn't. So Darkwing runs away, as is Darkwing's forte. And we catch up to him at the Mallard house, where Death is knocking on the door. And this is one of those segments where it's super over animated and he's just moving a lot, but he basically says, oh, there's no Darkwing Duck here. You want the house next door? And I screamed at my television because we go to the house next door and Death is knocking and Herb comes to answer. Oh no, Herb! Don't answer the door.
I'm coming! Becky, the gardener's here!
And he answers the door, of course, and it's just Death standing there with his scythe. Picks him up and starts dragging him down the street. Oh my god, poor Herb.
And Death apparently can't tell Herb apart from Darkwing for some reason.
That's the biggest insult. And Darkwing is still inside his house and trying to reason with himself.
Oh, I can't just stand here and let Death take Herb. Can I? I mean, the world needs Darkwing Duck, while Herb Muddlefoot serves no particular purpose.
It's like as Death is like dragging Herb down the sidewalk. He's like, the world needs Darkwing Duck, while Herb serves no particular purpose.
I feel like you would disagree.
He is a husband and a father, and he is a fabulous salesman, and he is a generous, kind-hearted soul who makes questionable food for his neighbors. He is a pillar of the community.
He is not going to Bougie.
He is not. He is like at the top of the VIP list for heaven, I'm convinced. So we don't really see, because the way that Darkwing is talking, he is completely on board with Herb taking his place in the afterlife, but we don't know what his reasoning is, why he talks himself out of it, because he does wind up going out on the sidewalk and distracting Death, and Herb gets away. So, yeah, good for Darkwing for doing the right thing. But I just thought it was funny that he was convincing himself that Herb didn't need to be saved, then just went out and saved them anyway. So, good on you, Darkwing. Good on you. So Darkwing shakes Death long enough to go back to Morgana's, where she's still researching magic spells, and she does another one that makes Gosalyn's shoes like tap dance away. And this is where Darkwing does his typical Darkwing thing where he completely gives up. Just like, okay, I guess this is it. Launchpad says, wow, DW seems real depressed, even for a dead guy. Yeah,
Oh, Launchpad.
he does. And then the only one who has a sense of duty in this family, Goslin, vows vengeance against Megavolt. Because Megavolt is still on the Opal Windbag show, promoting his book. It had a really long name. I didn't write it down, but it basically was like, I killed a superhero and so can you. The gist of it. So she goes off and does her Goslin thing, and Darkwing and Launchpad are wandering through the graveyard. Oh my god, this part is so good.
It is.
Wandering through the graveyard. And Darkwing is just kind of coming to terms with the fact that he's dead, and he regrets that he wasn't able to go to his funeral because he assumes there was throngs of mourners and not a dry eye in the house. And as he's walking, they pass this little orange traffic cone on what looks like freshly dug soil, and he completely goes back, and that's his head marker. The marker of his burial site is a traffic cone with his picture taped to it.
Not to be morbid, but it would have been gratifying to see the throngs of mourners, to hear the national outpouring of grief, to feel the... What? This is it? Is this the end of Darkwing? No mounds of flowers spread over my grave? Where are the tasteless statues, the monumental memorials to my memory? Why? Why didn't I hire a good press agent when I had the chance?
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, and he is furious, as he should be. And we just kind of stay on Launchpad's face as we hear him raging. And I'm wondering if he was supposed to be crying or something, but he just looks bored.
He reaches up and he flicks his bill, and just seems like his brain has left the building. Like he's just head empty.
Yeah, Launchpad is buffering.
Maybe that's his defense mechanism. Every time that Darkwing goes on a huge tantrum, Launchpad just disassociates and is like, here we go again. I'm just going into my head.
I'm just going to my happy place where he gets to crash planes nonstop. We go back to the TV studio where Opal and her creepy beak lips, like, I think it's worse than, well, it can't be worse than Monster Dairy, but she's just got like the full beak, but she's got plump red lips on the, it's unsettling. But she's interviewing Megavolt about how his life has changed now that he's a murderer. And basically everything's coming up Megavolt until Goslin grabs Opal's mic. So yeah, Goslin starts telling them off and starts telling the audience that if they bought his book, they should demand a refund. And she kind of went on for a while, but that's the part where it's the last straw for Megavolt. Because
a refund?
How dare you say that about his book? That's it. So then he advertises that he'll be killing Goslin on his show, Megavolt's Crime of the Week.
And nobody tries to stop him, and nobody seems to care.
It's true. It's true. But this Megavolt's Crime of the Week show is soon dubbed Megavolt Live, and it's just Megavolt with a standing camera in his lighthouse lair as he has Goslin tied up to a pillar. And he just narrates to the camera, which, I mean, without the murder aspect, I would totally watch Megavolt's one-man show. Darkwing shows up as a ghost, and Goslin proclaims it, and Megavolt reminds her that Darkwing is a dead duck, remember? You know, that'd be a good title for an episode. And Launchpad shows up and is also pretty much immediately tied up. So now he's got 2 people to murder on air. And then Death shows up again, and this is actually the first time that he speaks. So, like, prior to this, he was just a big looming figure, and so we get to hear Tony J.
All I have to do is... Oh yeah. I forgot all about you.
But I did not forget about you.
Sorry, pal, but you'll just have to wait. I have some lives to save here. Hey, you can't do this to me. You can't.
Oh, I've been doing it for quite some time now. Trust me, I know my job.
Oh, look, come on, let me go.
he doesn't care about what's going on. He doesn't care that 2 people are about to be murdered. He just grabs Darkwing Duck and starts sinking through the floor as if it's venting crack shell and Negaduck ooze. And
he's going down.
Mm-hmm. Just like Pitbull and Kesha predicted. And Death, for his part, he's very sad. He's very sad that people always run away from him. And for a character that doesn't have a face, he's very emotive. Like, his hood kind of droops sadly. And he's very cute.
He is.
For Grim Reaper, I feel bad for him. So then Darkwing does the thing that everybody does and tries to make a deal with Death. And for, like, something not that grand, basically. He just says, if I can do something that you can't do, just give me an hour and I'll, and then you can have me. It's like, huh, that's not, like, he could have gone full blown and then I'll be alive again. But he just asked for an hour. And this is where the hand thing comes back in with the wiggling middle fingers that Darkwing is apparently an expert at. So he does that, and Death attempts to do the same thing, and his hands literally fall apart. A rain of bones on the ground. But he's not mad. He's just like, yeah, all right. See you in an hour.
He was embarrassed.
He was. It was shameful. Oh. So a deal is deal, and Darkwing gets back up to where Goslin and Launchpad are, and he tries to untie them because he never learns a single lesson ever in his life, and he is incorporeal and cannot untie them. As the electronics start to attack them, Launchpad, basically with the tutelage of Darkwing, as Darkwing tells him what to do, gets to play the hero and gets cut free and starts reciting what Darkwing is telling him to say, but he's doing it in a very theatric way that's very funny. Like, he's standing in awkward positions, and Darkwing, he's flubbing his lines, so Darkwing has to, like, yell at him and tell him not to ad-lib. So it's pretty fun for, a man listening to his dead friend tell him how to be a bad guy.
You can tell Launchpad has no experience in the heroing business. It's not his job.
He's in the sign-kicking gig, and business is bad. I don't know. So the secret weapon here is the same thing, basically, that thwarts Negaduck, because he basically depresses Megavolt into sitting down.
Now what, DW?
Tell him there is nothing in this world as precious as life.
There's nothing. There's nothing in this world as precious as life.
Yeah. Come again?
If you only worry about yourself, you're just gonna end up lonely and unhappy.
I am.
Ye have to treat others with the respect and kindness that they deserve.
Perfect. Now mutilate him.
Hey, what happened to respect and kindness?
Darkwing the malevolent ghost just says, like, in like his super evil voice, goes, now mutilate him.
That's why Darkwing's going to Bourgeois. Now we know.
And Launchpad, to his credit, doesn't really mutilate him, he just ties him up. But if that was the way the Negaduck thing had resolved in the comics, it would have been spectacular. Negaduck, you don't have any friends. Oh, I don't have any. Mutilate him.
Finish him.
Oh, finish him. So that's all good. That's wrapped up with Megavolt, quite literally. And we go back to Macawber Manor, and Morgana still can't find anything. I hope Darkwing. And Death shows up again and allows him to say goodbye to everyone. So it's very sad. Everybody's crying. And to break up the tension, though, his goodbyes to Goslin are so good.
Bye-bye, Goslin, honey. I love you. Remember, wash behind your ears, eat your vegetables, stay out of prison, and...
Darkwing, we really must be going.
He knows her too well.
He does. It's spectacular. So he looks so brave as he proudly walks out the door with Death. Everyone is so impressed with him, but of course, as soon as he hits the path outside and the door is closed, he immediately is throwing himself at Death's feet, groveling. But, lo, it does the thing this episode. It does it. It does the old trope where, much like Dorothy Gale in Kansas, as he's groveling, we hear the token, like, waking up chimes of cartoons and media of a certain era. Darkwing is not, in fact, dead. It was all a dream. He is clutching at Launchpad, and he is living his best It's a Wonderful Life self as he's wandering around. And he's just so happy. His life is wonderful, and he's alive, and he's only got bandages on his head because this is a cartoon, kids.
He kind of breaks the fourth wall because he's like, wait.
Hey, wait a minute. You're telling me I went through all that mental anguish over a dream? What a cheat! But anyway, the point is I'm alive and well and definitely not dead.
Basically calling out the writers.
And then he goes to put the cake mix in the oven. And so this is our second oven of the episode, in case anybody is wondering. And when he opens it, a gout of flame bursts out, and Beelzebub is inside and asks him if he has the correct time. And that's how the episode ends.
What is that hinting at? Is it hinting that it wasn't a dream, but maybe a what if he had in fact died, that all would have played out, and Beelzebub's just reminding him of that fact?
Maybe Death felt for him and was like, oh, well, let's just I can't stand all this groveling. It's too pathetic. Yeah, sure, go back. And Beelzebub is, either that or the devil can randomly poke his head out of your oven and ask you what time it is. I mean, any scenario is likely in this case. So, there we go. That's the final scene of this, and I'm pretty sure it ends with a dun 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 dun.
It sure does.
Because what's funnier than the devil in an oven? And that is Dead Duck. It's a good one.
Yeah, I like this episode. It's very, it's got a lot of comedy, as he pointed out, but, and like a lot of absurdity, but it does have a few tender moments, especially him and Goslin. She looks genuinely very upset when he's saying goodbye to her for the final time. And
heartbroken.
Yeah, and so it's all very sad, and you know, we get to see Morgana and Launchpad, and he's saying goodbye to them. And it sounds like him and Morgana hadn't gotten into a relationship at this point. Because he says, I wish we could have gotten together. So it seems to be either she was still a villain and he was dreaming about them getting together at this point, or she was in like the middle of reformation. Who knows? Yeah, I like it. I consider it one of the iconic episodes.
Yeah. And for as silly and everything as it is, it's still pretty dark, because Darkwing dies and goes to hell and then comes back to Earth and sees his grieving family. Yeah, I mean, it's a Darkwing Duck episode. It can only go so deep, but I feel like this is probably the deepest that the show goes.
The whole point was he didn't wear a helmet and he died because he wasn't being careful. So it drove home like a really, you know, important safety tip for the kids.
Yeah, it was good. There was quite a few puns, which I enjoy. And the sight gags were really great in this one, too. Like the whole cone thing.
This episode really demonstrates why Megavolt is one of the top. I think I would consider him, next to Negaduck, probably one of the most dangerous villains of the series. And you can see, like, I guess this is, if technically Darkwing was dreaming, then maybe this is how he sees Megavolt. But Megavolt was pretty brutal in this one. Like, he had absolutely no regrets whatsoever about murdering Darkwing, or at least pretending he did, and then taking all the credit and writing a book and, you know, getting all the love and attention and praise for it.
And then openly plotting to murder Goslin and Launchpad on live television.
Exactly.
And then even in inside Binky's brain, he was 1000% ready to murder Binky. So he might not have the highest body count, but I think he does have some bloodlust.
He does.
And We never really know. Maybe I think he just robbed the bank in this one. But he wasn't too distracted by electronics in this one. It was always good. It's always fun when Megavolt is involved.
It's a good
Even when
time.
it involves murder.
Yeah, it's a good time for us, the people watching it, not so much for Darkwing.
So I get. Does this make Megavolt public enemy number 2? Or is he
Yes.
public enemy number 3?
I'd say number 2. I'm gonna give Negaduck a pardon and let him be number 1 because I don't count Dr. Slug.
Why not?
Because he's not really in it. He's more like a running gag. I guess if you really want to rub it in, Negaduck is technically number 2. But I think in terms of like actual villains that we see, I think Negaduck is probably the most out of control and dangerous and maniacal. But Megavolt comes pretty darn close.
I'll agree with that assessment. Alrighty. So on the Quackerware freshness scale, how we rating this one?
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because, like I said, it's an all-around good episode. It's iconic. It's got a lot of puns. The only stuff that is off is, as you brought up, was the animation, pretty much. Just like little things here and there. And, I mean, it did end up being a dream. I mean, it had to be. What was the other choice? To let it be the last episode of the series and then he just dies. But, yeah, I'd say 4 out of 5. I like it.
Okay, I agree with that assessment. I think that's pretty tight until you get to about like the halfway point, and then Herb shows up. So I have to rate it at least an 11,000 out of 5. Because even though he was in it for 5 seconds, what a beautiful 5 seconds it was.
That is probably one of my favorite scenes in that episode. It's just so random, but it's so realistic to what would happen.
It's so funny. It's just so funny. Because it's just like one of those stupid things where it's like, oh, there's nobody in here but us chickens. And then poor Herb is getting dragged down the street by death as Darkwing is safe inside his house. Fun Muddlefoots. And also, I'm surprised that Herb and Binky have a gardener after as much effort as they put in and inside Binky's brain themselves to maintain their lawn. But maybe this is after that, after they kind of burned down the house the 3rd time, and they decide to leave the gardening to the professionals.
Maybe Death has a side gig as a gardener.
Oh.
And he's legit the gardener that shows up and didn't tell anyone.
So he was just dragging Herb down to the bank so that he could pay him for the last time he came to the house?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, I could get behind that. Because he did just kind of drop Herb once Darkwing showed back up. His two jobs can't flow together perfectly. He needs to separate them a little bit. Understand the side hustle and the main hustle. And speaking of hustles, there's nothing to do with hustles. I repopulated our wheel of names.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna spin it?
So I am gonna spin it. Do you want me to refresh your memory as to what's on here first, or do you want to
make it a surprise? Surprise me.
Okay. Let's see. It's spinning. Next week, we will be watching. Oh, I think this is one you don't like. The Incredible Bulk.
Oh no!
Is this the one where Launchpad gets a giant brain?
No, you're thinking of Heavy Mental.
Mental.
This is the episode where Bushroot has like a formula and Darkwing gets all muscular, but then there's just a lot of weird like body transformation stuff.
Okay. I don't have any memory of this one. All right. So I feel like we had a streak of good episodes here of 2, and here we go. We're going into the Incredible Bulk next time. So until then, dear friends and listeners, remember that crime does not sleep, and neither do we. And for the love of God, wear a helmet.
Yes. Please don't go to Bougie.
Do not go to Bourgeois.
Bourgeois. Bougie.
Bougie bourgeois.